Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker, shills, desolate service peasants, consumers, demographic groups. I am a useful idiot, and today I would like to talk about a pretty big topic, something that I'm very interested in, and it's one of those things that is so all around us that a lot of people don't even notice it, and that is the corporatization of every aspect of the American citizen's life, and one could argue a good portion of the globe as well. What I've come to learn over the years as I've gotten older that everything is pretty much economics. One can talk about all the different subjects of study and genres, but when you boil it down, human nature and human activity can be boiled down to a lot of economic relationships. And another aspect of this is as we move from the post-World War II era, and we've moved away from individualism to collectivism, which has made it that much easier to corporatize everything. So previous to that, America was noted for its rugged individualism and the efforts of the individual. And, through the ideas of consensus and manipulation and corporatization, we've moved into a collective society. And it's ironic as well because, of course, the whole 60s era of U.S. history is noted for what it likes to think of as radical individualism. But in actuality, like I brought up in other videos, it turned out to be just another form of collectivism. So now we encourage everybody to compromise and reach a consensus and kind of get with the, what do they call it, the common thread or conventional thought. That's what I was looking for. So anyway, but my point being that every aspect of our lives are now corporatized, and I will systematically go through the information, give examples, and show just how this is. And I would have to imagine that once I'm through, most people will see a lot more corporatization than they see now. And if I can achieve that, then my job is well done. So I think the first startling fact to come out with, I'm going to utilize mostly knowledge I have rather than sheets and numbers. So some of these things will be a little more general than I would like. But that said, let's get right to it. 3-year-olds apparently can now identify 600 brand names by the time they're 3 years old. So that says a lot right there. The corporatization starts right in the beginning. And this is done through, hours and hours of TV, and then you've got playgrounds and McDonald's and all kinds of ways to gear corporatization and consumer culture into children. So we even have marketing demographic studies that are now done on different groups going younger and younger and younger now. They have tweeners and everyone else. So they're, these corporations and whatnot are trying to market to every single human being, no matter how young. They probably regret the fact that they haven't been able to figure out how to corporatize and consumerize fetuses yet, but I'm sure they're working on that. And you may think I'm joking, but I'm not. But of course, by the time you get to high school, you get this mediocre education. You have corporations who actually produce the textbooks, and so there's a corporate aspect to the textbooks to make sure to keep forming corporate-friendly attitudes. And then, of course, in high school, you have food franchises like McDonald's and Pizza Hut and things like that operating, and they have access to all kinds of soft drinks and other corporate gear, and any corporate sponsorship that goes along with that. So they're well indoctrinated, and of course we live in a culture where junior high school students and high school students are one of the biggest consumer groups. They have a huge amount of spending power, and that's another change we've seen since World War II, is the amount of spending power that teenagers have now is a pretty staggering amount. I can't remember exactly what I heard, something like $20 billion a year. But the fact that they have that much spending money and they're consumed with materialism and consumerism and have to have every new gadget. And of course, all the corporations are more than happy to put teenagers in debt. And this goes into college too, get all the college students and the high school students, addicted to credit early and turn them into consumer culture where at the earliest ages they have to have all the latest gadgets and all the latest clothes and the right labels and everything else. And that's not to mention, of course, boomer parents who like to buy their, wee ones, the smallest children, designer clothes, which of course they outgrow in about 2 minutes. So it's a lot of money spent on something that a lot of people probably don't even notice. And then colleges are a good example of corporatization, because the sports program, which is a corporate breeding ground for future corporate sports stars, they get the most money. The coaches get the most money. The most funding goes to the colleges because of the sports programs. All the people in the schools are already on the corporate tit, and it's just a shame that all that public money goes to these schools when, like I say, they're a breeding ground for sports teams. Or a school like the University of Washington, where I am, they have a medical research program school, and it's completely corporatized too. The public pays for a lot of these schools and gives them a lot of money, and a lot of private enterprise comes out of these schools. I think the University of Washington has something like 137 different companies that were created out of research done with public money at the school. Now we have 137 more private corporations that were essentially started using public money. So there's another good example of corporatization. TV shows. TV shows are corporatization. We've all grown up with TV. We have a comfort zone there, and we're constantly bombarded by advertising. Of course, cable originally came along and said, well, you're not going to have advertisements because you'll be charged for it, so you won't have advertisements. Now cable TV gets their subscription money as well as the advertising money, so it's completely corporatized, and there's more commercials than there ever was. And TV shows also provide a lot of alienated citizens surrogate friends. So they develop friends, on TV. That's who they connect with. So they think, if Jennifer Aniston ever met me, we'd be best friends, that sort of thing. And then movies are completely corporatized as well. They're full of product placements. All sorts of companies pay all kinds of money to have product placements. A lot of it flies by you so fast, but literally there are Hollywood blockbusters that have over 120, 130 different product placements in it. So there's big money there. It's corporatized. A lot of it's subliminal. And, the movies are also presenting a very corporate-friendly world and corporate values. So, also, movies tend to push the idea of the anti-hero. The anti-hero has been very big since Marlon Brando and James Dean, and we have a whole culture of the anti-hero now, where our young people are looking up to people who resort to violence to solve all their problems and have smart-ass, snappy answers to everything, and are just generally rude. So we have the anti-hero, and that's something I brought up before, which is the commodification and commercialization of rebellion. So even the idea of rebellion has been commodified and commercialized and corporatized. And they will play each side off each other, and those who rebel have to go to special corporate stores to buy their anti-corporate gear and their fashion and all that. And then we have music. I've resisted the idea that there's any concerted effort to manipulate us through music, but needless to say, you have a lot of music that is completely corporatized. They try to say a lot of these people are artists, but they're actually entertainers. And 20 years from now, people are not going to look back at Madonna and read her lyrics about party down all night, shake my ass, and fuck me in the morning. That will not be looked back on as art. So we live in an era of commercialized corporate product where there are hardly even a lot of musicians involved. There are drum machines, producers, keyboards, samplers, samples, all sorts of electronica, where one person can construct a lot of that music, and they just bring in a really hot chick who's very marketable and easy to brand, and that's what a lot of music is now. And and you've got all the big commercial rock bands who all use the same producer, so they all end up kind of sounding the same, and very commercialized, and a lot of bands can't even afford to go out on tour anymore, these huge tours, because they have to have corporate sponsors, so they're corporatized. They can't attack corporate values. So there's another example of that. And then we have a lot of anti-celebrities between TV and movie, people who become famous because they woman takes her 5-year-old to the tanning salon and fries her face, and she's going to be famous for a while. We'll be able to ride that out. Octomom. Woman has 8 children and is now going to go on welfare and make porn movies and hopes to get a reality show. And she will be someone who demands people's attention. So we have soldiers dying in Iraq and Afghanistan. People don't even know their names, but they know the names of Snooki and Lady Gaga and the burnt face lady and all these sort of people. So there's some more corporatization for you there. Clothes. Look at the trends in particularly in the 80s and 90s, where having the brand visible became all the rage. So now people are very brand conscious. Even people that really can't afford to be brand conscious are brand conscious. So deep is the corporatization. So it's very important to have the right brand of shoes, the right brand of pants, underwear, belts, hats, sunglasses, electronics, and everything else. So that's just an interesting trend that we have. The Nike brand itself is worn on the outside for everyone to see, and so people who walk around there, they're actually walking billboards for corporate entities, and they're not even aware of it. They're oblivious. And then we have the corporatization of relationships too, where people do charts and figure out, like a spreadsheet, figure out what the pluses and minuses and kind of ascertain things about whether to get married based on a lot of commercial aspects and viability and that sort of thing. So it's become more of a negotiation and a contract. And work has been commercialized too. All those values that we see in corporate America, unfortunately, we see in a lot of small businesses as well, as they try to emulate these successful large corporations where, the individual and humanity and emotion and all these things are taken out. So we have a pristine, controlled environment. And our conversation is infiltrated with all sorts of corporate things. People go to work day after day and repeat all these corporate slogans, corporate commercial jingos, famous comedic lines from corporate blockbusters. So, the corporatization infects our very language. And, where's the beef? And I'm loving it, and all sorts of things. I'm a wild, crazy guy. A lot of people out there probably don't remember some of these references, but Steve Martin was a comedian who was very huge, and you couldn't talk to another person back in the 80s and not have them mimic Steve Martin. So our conversation is even infiltrated. And then going back to movies and music and commercials and all that, we have vast cross marketing too. So every piece of corporate product is cross-marketed. So you have a movie and it has a soundtrack and it has action figures and toys and serial tie-ins and all kinds of crazy stuff. So each product is a vast franchise of corporatization. So we also have that. And another aspect of all this is we have all our public buildings, stadiums and everything, and buildings are all named after corporations. It used to just be, Seattle baseball. Now it's with Quest Field. Now it's CenturyLink Field. And so, even the places where the most citizens gather all have corporate titles, and they're all corporatized and have all the corporate swag. And, and the whole sports culture in the U.S., which is very big with football and baseball and basketball and all that. And of course, that's all completely and utterly corporatized. And more than that, it's militarized. So we have this real tie-in with patriotism, sports, competition, military. And that's very insidious as well. People get very used to the militarization of our culture and the glorification of war. And I support the troops, and I'm as patriotic as anybody, if not more so. And I abhor this militarization of our culture. That's not what America was about for most of our history, and that's not what our founding fathers intended. So, we go down the line of corporatization. We have bottled water. I knew that was a scam right from the start. There's no way anybody could tell that didn't come out of a tap. And sure enough, most of the bottled water comes out of the tap, and people just buy it up. So we create this huge plastic problem, and people get their designer waters, and it comes right out of their tap. So that's pretty funny. And then SUVs and cars are corporatized. They have all these different car makers. A lot of the models and body styles are all the same, and people are, buying up different corporate product for little variances they think helps interpret their personality and their worldviews. And then we got designer drugs. That's corporatization, where maladies are created that don't even exist, and then people want to have special drugs. And of course, we have this level now where people are proud of the drugs they take in a lot of cases, and we have people, celebrities joking on TV all the time about all the pharmaceuticals they take, and this whole country is loaded up on all sorts of pharmaceuticals and designer drugs, and that's all corporatization. Credit cards, people live on credit cards now, literally, and obviously, creating these debt vehicles and then charging exorbitant interest rates, and buying things that you can't afford right now, and then being in debt for the rest of your life just to pay off for that momentary gratification. That's utter and complete corporatization. Magazines are another great example of daily corporatization. You have a lot of women's magazines that are about 95% advertising. A lot of men's magazines are about 60% advertising. So you're plunking down a bunch of money to look at a world you will probably never live in, and 95% of it is advertising. So you're paying someone money to give you a whole magazine full of advertising. It's another example of paying for your own enslavement. And then the standards set in these magazines, which the whole country strives to. We wear the clothes and the haircuts and the type of glasses that corporate media, corporate outlets, and corporate manufacturers all pander to us. So everybody's kind of striving for these corporate images, and that includes the rebellious ones. They're mining bohemian image going back 100 years, this legacy, to find their particular rebellious style. But that's also sold to them by corporations, ironically. So you got our designer coffees now. You can't just go get a cup of Joe. You have to spend $3 a day, $100 a month for a lot of people. I'm sure it's more or less for different people, but that's quite an expense for just a little coffee drink. So that's more corporatization. The fact that you need these designer coffee drinks that cost upwards of $2, $3, $4 a day. Of course, our food is very corporatized. It's all heavily processed now. It's grown by giant agricultural mega corporations, and our seed legacy is all controlled by Monsanto, and then of course they want to control our food completely with genetically modified food. So there's a complete corporatization of our food system, our food manufacturing, food distribution, the food product itself. In fact, a lot of our food product is food product and not really food. More corporatization. All the gadgets that we rely on now, computers, iPhones, Blackberries, cell phones, all the gadgets, all corporatization. How much convenience do you need? How much do you need to have access to that all the time? That's part of the corporatization society, where you have to be doing something all the time. That's part of the corporate mentality. So these people who pride themselves on multitasking because they're driving, eating food, putting on their makeup, talking on the cell phone, smoking all at the same time is a badge of pride. And more of this corporatization where people are not allowed even the leisure time. And certainly that's helped to debilitate any sort of revolutionary class, because everybody's just too busy. Their time is all full. And that brings up part of the thing about corporatization that really gets me, is that every increment of time and space in our lives has to be configured to market to someone and generate revenue. And if it doesn't, if every increment of time and space does not generate revenue, then it will be reconfigured until it does. So nothing has value unless it generates revenue. So that's the ultimate part of a corporatization of our everyday life. And not only that, we have this reliance on so-called experts, and they're all corporatized. All the scientists, all the economists, all the historians, all the journalists, all the professionals are generally working either for the government or the corporation, who are becoming one and the same. And therefore, we're going to have all these ideas that the corporations want, supported by evidence supplied by these so-called experts. But don't ever forget that they're on the government corporate payroll. They don't have your interests in mind. They have their interests in mind. So that makes it all that much more complicated. And part of this corporatization uses some similar tactics, and that's infotainment, where information becomes entertainment, becomes information, and news and fashion and entertainment are all interchangeable, so nobody gets any real facts. So this fantasy world of the corporate life, where you go down to the bar and it's like a beer commercial with supermodels and ruggedly handsome, half-shaven men, all having a great time, like there's a big party going on. And I know that does exist, but most of our experience is going down to a bar, and there's a lot of drunk, middle class, lower class, working class people just trying to let loose and generally get drunk and make a fool of themselves. It's not like beer commercials at all. So, anyway, and we have the corporatization of the police. They love all their new toys and their new gadgets, and Homeland Security makes sure they get it all, and all the corporations love providing that material. And I think that's one of the reasons why we moved away from a public servant, protect and serve mentality in the police to, I'm a badass, I like to fuck people up, and look at the police. They got fast cars and sonic cannons and tasers and guns and clubs, and so our police force tends to attract testosterone-loaded thugs now instead of a lot of people that like to protect and serve. And I know that's a gross generalization, but I see a lot of that. And I think that's, once again, is due to corporatization. Corporatization is about divisive issues. It's about making you feel self-conscious. You need to have these things to make life work. And that includes stuff like hygiene. You got spinach in your teeth and your underarms stink, and you got toe jam. Corporate America's going to step right in and fix all these things, because if you don't, your life is going to be hell. And part of corporatization is also victimology. It creates a culture for underclasses and the disenfranchised, and that includes every ethnic group, and blacks and women, and anybody that they can say is oppressed. That's part of the corporate agenda to support their industries. The magazines are full of articles about what victims women are, and women will resonate. That message will resonate, and they will buy these magazines. So there's a whole vast industry created there. All the self-help books. So anyway, there's another big part of the corporate mechanism: victimology, divisive issues, infotainment, militarization. And if you want to really go back and get to the heart of corporatization in America, I recommend everyone they look up Edward Bernays, and he's all about the father of advertising propaganda in the U.S. And there's a lot of great material on YouTube. I'll put an attachment below. And and he brings up a lot of things about corporatization, which is creating desire where there wasn't any. They make you want things you don't necessarily need or want. And we've got a culture now where the getting is more important than the having. The shopping is more important than the using. And it's a lot about pushing emotional hot buttons. So they get to you to respond by reaching to you emotionally, and that's what commercials do. They're very calculated. And don't ever forget, these commercials, they have rooms full of scientists to develop these commercials to work exactly the way they want them to. And although you may look at them and think they're innocuous and they're not working on you, trust me, there are a lot of effort's been put into them to make sure they know how to push those emotional hot button issues. And I understand that because I enjoy life. I like to watch the occasional television show, and I like to go see movies, and I indulge in the corporate culture that I have to. I resist as much as possible. And I don't indulge in a lot of things. I don't have cable TV. I don't have television. I don't drink soft drinks. I don't eat fast food. And, I'm not trying to be holier than thou. I just try and do what I can to stay away from that. But I'm not a stick in the mud. I like my corporate things as well. And I enjoy life. And I don't just mope around and bitch about everything around me because, overall, life and our culture has developed on a trajectory that it had to, and there's a lot of people sticking their hands in it and getting involved in it and mucking it up, and this is what we're left with, a life where there's a lot of pleasure there, and it's designed to be pleasure. It's designed to distract you. It's designed to um, moderate you and keep you calm and enjoyable. And I think a lot of times I think of corporate culture, I think about the fact that, you take any creature and you put it in a cage. If you dress up the cage nice enough, it still feels like home.